You're going to want to stay tuned to this episode of Cell TV to hear Dr. Rachel Fresco. She is the CEO of Bio-Botanical Research, and they have come out with some very unique products that are transforming really hard to get areas in the gut, like Biofilm. Matter of fact, the one product we're going to talk about, Biocidin, it was brought to me by one of my clients that said, hey, this product is really what worked for me. You have to check it out. And I did. And that's how Dr. Rachel ended up on this show. But look, we're going to examine Lyme disease. Yeah, really hard. You're going to realize that there's some unique products here that could be of assistance there. Parasites, SIBO, another almost impossible to fix gut problem, small intestinal bacteria overgrowth. Yeah, wait till you hear. We're going to give specific protocols. Candida, sinus issues, all of it. Stay tuned to this episode of Cell TV. Well, Dr. Rachel, thank you for joining us. This is a big topic that our viewers absolutely love because everyone's trying to fix their gut. Dysbiosis, SIBO, Lyme, biofilms, how our dental stuff is affecting our gut and our health. All these are topics that you hit, that you lecture on. So we wanted to bring you on the show because we are always looking for new research, new studies, new products in this area of the gut, because if we can't fix the gut, we're not going to fix the brain, we're not going to fix the immune system, and we're not going to feel well. So welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Dr. Pompa. I'm excited because I've been doing this research and work now almost 30 years. So I started working with Biocidin way back in the late 80s, and it was Great Smokies Diagnostic Labs, which is now Genova, of course, who contacted me. And they said, we don't know what this is you have, but it kills everything, and we want to use it as a candidate substance on our comprehensive digestive stool analysis. So I said, sure, fine, that's fine. So suddenly, 30,000 doctors a month are finding out that this formula, the Biocidin, is very equal to a lot of the pharmaceuticals for yeast and bacteria. And so people who are more functional medicine oriented, they want to use something that's less toxic if they can. And so people started using it. And so we started compiling research and kind of went on from there. So that's how we sort of got our claim to fame, was with the dysbiosis. And then we branched out into research in other infections.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's the Biobotanical Research. That's kind of what you head up, correct?
Yes. So that's our company. And we've got 10 products that are all very much focused on either directly impacting infection as antimicrobials or as secondary support for the digestive system, secondary anti-inflammatory support, immune support. And all of these are nutritional supplements that practitioners can use with their patients to really help impact their health from a natural perspective.
Yeah, and most of them are practitioner grade supplements. You have to get them through your doctor. And I wanted you on the show because I actually came. The Biocidin, one of my clients turned me on to it and said, hey, I use this, right? And I know this client really well. And I know, hey, if it worked for this person, then this must be the real deal. I checked it out. And so that's kind of how I ended up here. I said, okay, these are some real products, no doubt. And I have a lot of my docs that watch the show too, and I want to turn them on to them as well. So as we talk about some of these cases, you can reference some of the products. And on Revelation Health here, Revelation Health will be able to get the product. So many people watching are going to want to get a product like Biocidin. All right, look, when we deal with pathogens in the gut, biofilm biofilms are normal. I want to point that out. We have biofilms, but it's a matter of a biofilm that has dysbiosis, meaning too many bad guys, not enough good guys. And these bad guys can hide the biofilms, and it becomes really difficult to knock them out. Talk a little bit about that, then we'll go into some specifics.
Yeah, so this has been a huge area of research for me because it was sort of the cart came before the horse in a way, because for years, doctors are giving me feedback that their patients on Biocidin are getting better from these chronic infections like ear infections and UTIs and other things. And the common element in a lot of these infections is the biofilm component, that once you've had an infection in your body, say more than a few weeks, they'll start to develop this outer coating that will protect them from detection from your immune system and also from treatment. And so unless you can break that biofilm, you really can't impact in a long-term sense, these infections. And so what I found out in my research is, sure enough, almost every herb in the Biocidin, if you look it up on PubMed, if you look in that herb and biofilm, you'll find out this one inhibits quorum sensing that causes the formation of biofilms. This one breaks the lipid layer that, is surrounding it. This one stops them from attaching or moving. So the combination altogether of these botanical ingredients, and these are ingredients that everyone knows. These are things like bilberry and grapeseed and garlic and golden seal and gentian and black walnut and things like that. There's a lot of things. It's also the essential oil components like oregano, tea tree, lavender, and galbanum, and then some secondary liver support. So that whole combination together just impacts microbes in a lot of different ways, and it also seems to stop them from becoming resistant. So I think that's the advantage that some of the botanicals have over antibiotics. Number one, that they can break biofilms and stop them from spreading and attaching. And number two, that they don't cause resistance. In fact, like 3 or 4 of the herbs in the Biocidin and in our other olive irex formula, which is an sort of viral olive leaf combination, that one, they both affect the efflux pump. So basically that's where the bacteria pump out the toxins of the antibiotics. They sense the antibiotic and they pump it out. So the antibiotic can't really effectively treat. And so when you have this efflux pump mechanism and you have the biofilm, you've basically created an antibiotic resistance.
Yeah.
And so the botanicals have a way of getting around that by shutting down the efflux pump. So there's a ton of studies on that. So when I've been lecturing at some of these, functional medicine conferences around the world, this is a topic that has been of great interest to doctors because they really weren't sure why they couldn't get rid of these sinus infections or why these patients were having these recurrent UTIs and things like that, or recurrent gut infections that won't go away. And so this is sort of the answer. And we've been able to really significantly impact people's health by addressing it.
Yeah, I mean, you have biofilms not just in the gut, but in the sinus cavities, all throughout. And this is a problem everywhere. I have to say, the Biocidin, and I haven't tried it. Olive leaf is one of my, I love it, right, as a killer.
Yeah.
When I looked at the ingredients in these, they're my favorites, many of them, right? And I thought how you stacked them in the formulas was absolutely brilliant.
Thank you.
There's a synergy in there somewhere that really works. And I think the key is what it does in the biofilms and what you were just explaining. I didn't know that. So that's awesome.
And also the other thing that's really important to think about is the concentration of these ingredients. So, you can get olive leaf from the GNC or something, right? And it might be like 5% olive leaf. You'd have to take the whole bottle to equal 2 capsules of our stuff because it's pharmaceutical grade from Europe. It's 22% oleuropen. Most of even the professional lines available have anywhere from 11 to 17 or 18%. I think we're one of the few that goes for the 22 to 24. In fact, the head person for the botanical company in Europe where we get most of our herbs, he approached me at the Expo West at Anaheim. And he goes, Rachel, you should be really proud because your company is in the 1% in terms of the quality of your ingredients. He said, there's hardly anybody who's putting in what you are. And I'm like, that's because since I own the company and I'm a practitioner, I just want it to work and I want the best thing I can get. And, profit margins are secondary. I don't have, venture capitalists or people telling me that, they need more money out of my company. It's just me. So I'm fine, I don't mind if it's the best, that's what I want. And I think that often surprises the manufacturers when I'm like, oh, look, we found this pharmaceutical grade quercetin. It's 170 times more absorbable than regular quercetin. And they're like, but it's twice as expensive. I'm like, I don't care. Put it in there.
No, believe me. I've been in this business a long time, right? It's like you can look at a product and go, all right, this is actually a really good product. And I stated that when I saw the products, and again, that's why you're here. It's really hard to find that these days because it is. It's mostly about profits out there. And
right.
Listen, I have an obligation to these viewers, right? It's like in the people that trust me, and even the doctors that I train, to find the stuff that really works and it's good stuff. We like to test everything as well because a lot of products are contaminated. I know. So that brings me to my next question is, are the products, what do you do for testing to make sure that we're not putting contaminated products in there?
Well, first of all, the ingredients themselves have to come with a certificate of analysis. And then that ingredient is actually checked to see, is that really the ingredient? So the company's either you're using mass spectrometry or some other method. Then they're doing like metals tests in addition to the typical microbial tests, right? For something like our Biotonic product that's organically grown in China, but still it's China, right? We get like a stack this high of like reports for pesticides or any kind of contamination that could have happened either there or on its way here. Molds, and like we had to reject recently. In fact, that's how I found the pharmaceutical grade quercetin for our Proflora for our product, because I knew I wanted quercetin in there, and then it came back. It was mold. It was moldy. I'm like, so then I went back to the drawing board. I'm like, let's do some more research online. Let's see who's making quercetin and where it's coming from. Sure enough, this company in Brazil, it was organic, sustainably grown, pharmaceutical grade. They had patented that absorbability of it. I'm like, this is much better. Let's get this one. So, and, you know, sometimes that happens.
What product is that in?
That's in the Proflora 4R. It's a spore-based probiotic combination. We were very grateful to Megaspore for letting us use several of their pharmaceutical spore strains. And then we added to that the quercetin, marshmallow, and aloe to kind of, you know, give the gut a little bit more help and a little more anti-inflammatory support when you're working with the spores. As you know, the spores are good because if you have SIBO, you can't use the regular acidophilus type probiotics.
Yeah, talk a little bit about that, because SIBO is one of the big problems today. I think a lot of people that they just battle it, right? And they can't use your average probiotic. It makes them worse. And oftentimes, I mean, the killers just aren't strong enough to knock it back. So give us a little protocol with these products for SIBO and using, you know, that particular probiotic.
Okay, so we did a study with Dr. Danielle Lewis, and we decided to try just the Biocidin and see if that by itself, what impact that would have in 6 to 8 weeks on a patient who had tested positive for SIBO. And we got 70 to 100% improvement in symptoms, and their lab tests on the hydrogen producers really was knocked back good. But the methane ones were still there, but the patients were feeling better. So we thought, well, this was no change of diet. This was no other products, just that one thing. So I said, okay, let's add in the Olivirex, right? Because the olive leaf is so good for the methane producing bacteria. Let's use things to mop up the toxins and pull those out, like the GI detox we have, which is a clay charcoal blend with a few other things, and probiotic like the Proflora 4R. So now we're seeing patients really, really responding well. In 2 to 3 months, their lab tests are looking really great. You'll still get a few people who are really resistant with SIBO, and they may need to do it longer or at a maintenance. And of course, the diet is paramount. If you don't, you know, I looked at your diets and I was so happy to see what you recommend, because it's exactly what I do with myself. I'm a person who has to work on inflammation too. And it's very important to have an anti-inflammatory diet, and a correct diet and a low sugar and correct type of nutrients for your situation. So we've seen good results with people with SIBO. And so I recommend that people, you know, talk to a health professional or you and get a consultation, maybe get the breath test done so that they have a baseline and then work on it, you know, and even if it takes you 6 months, it's a lot of people battle with this for 20 years. So if you could, you know.
And for our new viewers, I have to be sensitive. What is SIBO? They're probably asking. I would say most of our viewers have heard of it, but small intestinal bacteria overgrowth. Typical symptom is bloating after meals, severe bloating, even hours later. And one of the things I always say, don't forget about the ileocecal valve. You know, it's fooled me in a couple cases, you know, and that's, you know, when you draw a line between your belly button and that the ASIS, which is the biggest little lump on your sacrum. I'm trying not to be too technical, but it's a line that goes diagonal between it halfway. Push really hard in there, and you'll find your ileocecal valve. And if it's tender, yeah, you better massage it a few times a day, because that oftentimes is why those darn bacteria back up into the small intestine.
Right.
So talk a little bit about the Proflora, because that's we made the mention that we can't utilize typical bacteria with SIBO, because if the good bacteria from the large intestine are backing up into the small intestine, we're adding to that problem. So what does the Proflora do? How is it different in you know, for SIBO?
Well, the nice thing about spores is they kind of go directly into the large intestine. They go through, and when they get in the right environment, then they proliferate. They also actually secrete bacteriocins that are antimicrobial themselves, and they also modulate the immune system. So they're anti-inflammatory, they're antibacterial, and they sort of crowd out the unfriendly organisms. I think in the past, in our diets, we used to eat things from the ground, right? You ate food that you grew and there was dirt and you touched dirt, you got exposed to dirt. And these spore forming bacteria were a natural part of our diet, a natural part of our gut. And then today, everything's so clean, everything's so processed. We don't get in contact with dirt the way we used to, at least if you live in a city, perhaps you never do. I have horses, I have a garden,
True. It is. We need dirt. There's a product we've used for a while. It's Prescript Assist. It's soil.
Similar.
How does it compare to that?
It's very similar to something like that. I don't remember all the ingredients in Prescript Assist off the top of my head, but I know it's got Bacillus subtilis and so forth, which ours does. I think the difference in ours is that we added the quercetin, that pharmaceutical strength quercetin, and we added the aloe and marshmallow for motility and to give that type of fiber that helps those flora to grow. And you don't seem to get the reaction when you have that quercetin on board that, like I used to try taking the spore formers like Prescript Assist by itself, and I would get a little bit gassy or I'd get a little bit of reaction to it. But with that quercetin on board, it seems to like cut down that histamine response, that mast cell response.
Yeah, I'm going to try it with people. Admittedly, I haven't tried it yet. The Biocidin was my introduction into these products. So I'm excited about even about the Oliverics as well.
That's a great one. I mean, anytime you have I love the Oliverics for flu season support. When you're just looking to really help protect yourself when traveling, as a basic maintenance through the winter, if you're a person who's been susceptible or if you're elderly or otherwise immune compromised, something like that, just 1 or 2 a day of those through the winter can be super helpful. We also have the Biocidin in a throat spray version.
That's what I was going to ask you, because I saw that on the thing. You have the throat spray, and they use it up for a lot of our mold patients get Marcons.
Yeah.
They're using it for that.
We don't use the spray in the nose because it's got an alcohol content of about 65%.
So they're just using what were they using?
They'll use the regular Biocidin drops or the liposomal Biocidin, which is in that oil base. And we've had unbelievable results before and after. I've seen lab results come across my desk now and on Marcons and other things that people have had in their sinuses. People have cultured MRSA. I mean, it's amazing. And there's always a fungal component too. It's not just bacterial. So that's why breaking the biofilms and doing something that's antifungal and antibacterial is really good. And, we did a study on that throat spray with the University of Louisiana, double-blind placebo-controlled trial on immune-compromised athletes. So these are like marathon runners, NFL players, people who are just overexerting all the time. And when you test their secretory IgA in their upper respiratory tract, it's suppressed.
Terrible, yeah.
But 1 dose of the Biocidin throat spray post-exercise raised their SIgA by 66%.
That's so true, because I'm a cyclist, right? And I'll come back from a hard ride and I'm clearing my throat for hours. Even sometimes the next day if it was a really hard ride, because you rip the mucus out and it leaves it vulnerable is actually happening. And then that can lead you to infection. So that's a really good. So the throat spray is a good thing. And then talk a little bit about a protocol, because we have so many people watching this with, mold issues, Marcons, sinus issues. Talk about a protocol for that.
Right. So, Dr. Jill Carnahan, right? Mm-hmm. She's been using these for a long time. So what we've been doing is internally, we've been using that GI detox to bind the mycotoxins. And then topically in the sinuses, we have a little kit you can get. You just get a bottle and little buffered saline packets, and you mix up this solution. You pour it into a 1 ounce nasal spray bottle, and you put in about 10 drops of Biocidin or so. Shake it, and then use that up in 2 or 3 days. Wash everything off, and then refill it and do it again. Continue like that about 2 to 3 weeks is usually enough. I mean, if you have a cold or flu, it's usually not that much. It's a few days. But if you've had chronic sinus problems, you could do that. One doctor told me he took the liposomal Biocidin and he stuck it on his finger and stuck it up his nose. I'm like, well, that's elegant, but hey, okay. And, I felt like the spray kind of gets, more washing of the sinuses, but, this guy, he's a famous Lyme doctor actually. And he said he'd had sinus infections for 20 years and just sticking it up his nose with his finger every day, it cleared up his sinus infections.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, so you actually have the kit for the sinuses, right?
Yeah, so it's not on our website. It's something that the doctors can order.
Okay.
But all you have to do is really go to the drugstore or the health food store and get a bottle that has buffered saline nasal spray that the cap can unscrew.
Okay.
As long as you find one that the cap can unscrew, then you can just put the Biocidin in there, shake it, and do it yourself. You don't need to get our kit. It's
I mean, you
neti pot,
or like I said, they do sell the sprayers. We use the Restore sometimes.
Yes.
And we spray it up there. So
yeah.
But, yeah. Okay. That's great. Awesome. And then the Lyme. This is a big deal. I mean, when we talk about Lyme, again, it's Lyme can get obviously into the biofilms, into the joints. I mean, give us a typical Lyme protocol that you would use with some of these products.
Right. So with Lyme, patients can really have a Herxheimer or die-off reaction. In fact, any patient who takes Biocidin can have a Herxheimer or die-off reaction because you're killing things off, right? So, I mean, it's good to have that GI detox on board that we have, which is specially designed to mop up the endotoxins as you're killing things off.
We have a product that I helped develop called Bind. It has 4 different binders. Very similar thing, but hey, another one wouldn't hurt. So
no, I mean, yours is probably fine. I mean, we've got activated charcoal, zeolite, pectin, humic fulvic acid, and a special type of silica in ours. Yeah. In the new version of ours, we did just have one that had a pyrophyllite clay and activated charcoal. But here's a good source for you of your story about what do you do about contamination. This mine had changed the spot where they were mining, and the level of metals in that clay went up, and it was under what is allowable by the EPA and everything, but I didn't want it in my product anymore, and it didn't have the high silica content that it used to, which was the main thing that's like helping heal the gut lining. Yeah. So we wanted that silica in there, so that's where we switched the product. But so for Lyme patients, you start so slow. I mean, you might only put one little bit of Biocidin in a glass of water like this big and have them sip that water and see how they respond. If they do okay and they can get to the point where they can take, a whole pump of the liposomal or a drop of the regular Biocidin at a time, you gradually work up per their tolerance. You don't want them to be miserable. You don't want them to be, able not to function because of the die-off. So you have the GI detox on board, and something like the Proflora with the quercetin can really help too. And then slowly increase per their tolerance. And Lyme patients are going to stay on this for at least a year probably. So there's no rush. You just, and we bring the Olivirex on board because Lyme patients typically have a secondary problem with EBV or another herpes family type virus. And so getting a good antiviral in there as well is important. And the metals, as you know, you have to work on all of these things at once, but you just have to, with everyone, whether you're a dysbiosis person or a person with SIBO, you always start with just one drop. I mean, it sounds crazy, like one drop, really? But it's so much more concentrated than your typical like tincture from a health food store. It's just not even in the same category. So you have to start slowly and, work up per your tolerance to the recommendation that the doctor has or what's on our label.
What's the typical recommended on the label?
Well, you start with like one drop and you might work up to like 5 drops 3 times a day of the regular Biocidin. And the liposomal version, of course, it's going straight into your bloodstream because it's absorbing directly from the oral cavity. So that's even a stronger effect. So you might put like 1 pump in water and sip the water to start with, and then gradually work up to about 3 pumps a day. Now, if you have a situation with an acute infection, you can go higher for a short period of time.
Yeah, of course. Now, when would you go with the liposomal over the regular? I mean, or do you work up to the liposomal? What's your recommendation on that?
Oh, excuse me. I like to, most people can go onto the liposomal if they need it right away. Like yesterday, a doctor wrote to me and she said she had a patient with a urinary tract issue. So I would go with the liposomal because it's going to go bypass the digestion.
Got it. Yeah, immediately right in there. And then the regular one, of course, with Lyme and SIBO is probably better because you're starting slower and lower.
Right.
And you need it. And oftentimes you need it in the gut. So the regular one would be better there as opposed to liposome where you're trying to get it beyond the gut. So, okay.
Exactly.
Yeah. Got it. That makes total sense to me. I have to ask you the question, how did you get into this? Like, what's your story?
Well, Do you want the really long version or the really short version? I was a young woman, and I had gone in for my annual exam at Planned Parenthood, and they had done my pap smear, and they found that it was class 4, which is super high. That's like 1 stage away from cancer.
Yeah.
And so of course I was kind of freaked out, 19 years old or whatever, 20 years old. And so I at the time I was enrolled in a massage school, and the teacher there said, "Why don't you try this acupuncturist? She's really good." And so I went to see her, and she took my pulse and looked at my tongue, and she goes, "Oh yeah, you have blood stagnation in your lower burner." I'm like, "Great, can you fix that?" She's like, "Yeah." So twice a week for like 8 weeks, I went in and she did all this cupping, and my abdomen and back were just like black, like stagnation. And she didn't even do herbs. She just did acupuncture and cupping. I went back to get a follow-up, and my pap was negative. And I had gone, after the first pap, I had gone to a regular doctor, and he had scheduled me for some type of surgical procedure, right? And I'm like, that's really freaky. I mean, at 19, 20 years old, you don't want to lose your cervix. And he, when I went back to his office and I told him that I was having a negative pap now, he said, "I don't believe it. That's not possible." So he did it again, and it was negative. And he told me to get the hell out of his office.
The same thing happened to me and my wife.
Really?
She did a class 4, and he was basically like, it's cancer now, right? It's just, that's like the stage before, blah, blah. And you need to get the colposcopy, and then, and then basically it's going to lead to surgery, the whole thing. And
right.
And I basically said, well, we're not going to do that. And he basically said I was nuts. And basically that was it, kind of that cold shoulder whole thing. My wife fasted, and that's really what got me in. I was at that time learning about fasting. And then I took it to her, and she fasted about 12 days. And she went back and she had negative tests. And,
right.
Yeah. And they were mad.
They wanted to do the surgery. They didn't want us to get well.
It's like, maybe it was just because they were wrong. I don't know, because basically he said, "You'll be back." And, and it didn't come back at all. And matter of fact, her pap smears, became normal, and that's the story.
Yeah. So I decided I was going to become an acupuncturist. So I enrolled in 5 Branches University here in Santa Cruz, and I had already taken my state boards, and I was waiting for my license to come in the mail when Martin Lee from Great Smokies contacted me about the Biocidin. And before I could even get a private practice going, I had so many doctors wanting the Biocidin. I was like bottling it on the kitchen table in the beginning, and I didn't even have a company yet. And so I ended up doing this instead. So I ended up working primarily with physicians who are treating infection for the past 30 years as what I do. And I still keep my hand in. I did veterinary acupuncture too, because I'm a trainer for horses, and I do dogs as well. So I do a little bit of that for fun. But primarily, I've sort of become someone who trains doctors how to use herbal medicine. So that's what I do. I go to lecture at these conferences, and I, show the research and show how the botanicals can be used. And it's super exciting, especially in this day and age of antibiotic resistance and overuse of antibiotics. It's nice to have alternatives.
We'll have to do a training. We can do it even with our doctor group online.
Yeah, we do that.
Great. We start using some of these products along with some of the other things that we're doing. So that's great. Well, another big problem today, I would say, is a lot of heartburn, related conditions. Maybe it's related to H. pylori, maybe not.
Right.
H. pylori and stomach ulcers is a big link, right? So talk a little bit about that, because I know your products really target that well as well.
Yeah. So the liquid Biocidin drops, as you said, go straight to the gut. And the nice thing about the liquid is you're getting it from the mouth all the way through the esophagus and all the way down. We had several doctors do studies for us on H. pylori. One was doing biopsies, and other people have just done, the other types of testing for H. pylori. And we've seen that that's pretty easy to get rid of. The thing about H. pylori, though, is that it will come back if you don't either do an annual maintenance or look at what caused you to be susceptible to that bacteria in the first place. Maybe you have low stomach acid.
Yeah.
Or it's something about your diet.
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, H. pylori to a certain extent is normal. It actually works in relationship with ghrelin. And if you kill it off completely like a lot of the antibiotics do, you end up with problems with ghrelin and you're hungry all the time. So that may not be good.
That's interesting.
So,
yeah, so we've definitely had good results. I had one patient, you'll like this one. Now this guy was like a beefy triathlete, ultra, marathoner kind of guy. And all of a sudden he started like wasting. And the doctors could not figure out what's wrong with him. Do you have AIDS? Do you have cancer? Why are you like, and then the only thing that they could find, it was his nutritionist actually who found the H. pylori and treated him with Biocidin, and I think also a few of the other products in our range at the same time. And within 6 weeks, all his weight started coming back, his energy came back, and he was able to work out again. And he wrote us a letter. And I had never heard of H. pylori causing such a systemic condition.
I believe that because it is linked to ghrelin, which is a hunger hormone, and then it's also indirectly then linked to leptin, both of which affect the metabolism in a sense. So yeah, I mean, I could see that being an issue. And who knows? Once you have too high of H. pylori, then it's affecting other bacteria, and we know bacteria affect so many aspects.
Right. Yeah.
But the immune system and beyond, right? So
right, neurotransmitters and
everything. Yeah, neurotransmitters, you name it. Yeah, I mean that's why this is a big topic, right? I mean, so many people are, they're trying to fix their depression. They're trying to fix, whatever other condition they have, and meanwhile, it's a gut issue. It's a dysbiosis issue, and having these products that are able to penetrate the biofilms and really. I think that's, again, why these products are special, because we have so few products that can actually get into the biofilms. And that's where these guys hide these infections. And then you're not going to affect the way the brain works if you don't deal with this microbiome.
That's right. We did a study with the University of Binghamton in New York on biofilms, and they had multi-pathogen biofilms, so lots of different ones like Pseudomonas and other bacteria, along with single origin biofilms, and they tested the Biocidin against these, and within like the first 6 hours, the die-off curve is like this, like they're like almost completely gone, and then they culture them out for up to a month, and nothing grows back. And they even had the fluorescing microscope to show like a Candida biofilm. And then within 24 hours, the biofilm was completely dissolved with the Biocidin. So, and then the University of Jyväskylä in Finland repeated that research with the Lyme biofilm. So they saw that the Biocidin not only was effective at inhibiting and killing the spirochetes, but also the persister forms in the Lyme, as well as the biofilm, and also helped the liposomal Biocidin showed a really remarkable influx intracellularly. So in areas where you have pathogens inside the cell, mycoplasmas and things like that.
I mean, I can see that's where it's such a benefit too, because I mean, certain pathogens are in the gut, your Biocidin's working there, and then the liposome is working more in and around the cell, which again, we know that the Lyme, even certain parasites,
mold,
mold biotoxins, we have to approach that. So yeah, I mean, this is it's a great system. I can't wait to put more of it into practice. So appreciate you being on the show. I have to say this too. You answered one of my questions because you brought up Candida, and that was actually on my list of questions. We didn't talk about Candida. We talked a little bit about other pathogens like biotoxins from mold and endotoxins. But what about Candida?
Well, Candida, as you know, is an invasive type of fungus. The hyphal form perforates, and causes leaky gut. It can dig in there and really invade. It has a biofilm component. So there's a ton of antifungal herbs in the Biocidin, and that's why it works so well on Candida. Do you remember a guy named William Crook years ago? He wrote this Candida book years and years ago.
I remember that, yeah.
He put Biocidin in his book as the only herbal thing that he used.
Yes, I remember that book. You could find that book in like every little health food store. Remember when back in the day it was just like little health food stores around? Right. And that book was like on the counter. That's how I know it. Yeah.
Yeah. So, so for Candida, it's worked really well. And like I said, in sinus infections and children's ear infections, believe it or not, Candida is a main problem. And, you keep giving these kids the antibiotics, you're just giving more Candida.
Would you use the liposome in the ear?
I do. I take the liposome and I just drop it directly in the ear, or with a small child, you could take a little bit of cotton and, cover it maybe for, let them sleep like that, as well as taking them orally. But I just put it directly. And it's going to get to the outer ear and that canal area super well.
And then last one, parasites.
Yeah, they're nasty. And, certain kinds of parasites, like typical worms, like pinworms and tapeworms, and, it's horrible to think about, but people get them. And these products seem to work really well. We've had the worms coming out in the stool, people have reported. But when you have things like Blastocystis hominis and Giardia, those are the cyst forming. Mm-hmm. They can have up to a year life cycle. So you have to, what we developed is a program where you would take the whole range for, say, 3 months and then retest. And if you've gotten rid of all of the adults that can be seen swimming around there, now every month during the full moon, like 3 days before and 3 days after the full moon, you take them all again, because the full moon is when these things seem to sort of hatch and come out of the cysts. So you do this for up to a year. And this, according to Dr. Leo Galland, he did a study for us way back when in the early 90s, where he compared the Biocidin with Flagyl and other drugs at the time. I think there's better drugs now, like Humatin and tinidazole, but he said that the Biocidin was equally effective as the drug therapies, but neither were effective in 100% of patients. So there are certain subset of patients with blastocystis that it's just super resistant. Then those people are going to have to keep, working on this for a while. I think diet plays a big part too. If they went on your diet, the advanced stage of your diet, the cell detox part, if they did that, I think they'd have a lot better chance of getting rid of the parasites, because they thrive on carbohydrates. So if you cut out the grains and the sugars, you're going to have a better chance on something like Biocidin. And even if you do the drug therapies, the beautiful thing about the Biocidin is, because it actually helps shut down the antibiotic resistance and breaks the biofilms, it helps the antibiotics to work better. So, if you do need to use an antibiotic, if there's absolutely a good reason to bring these on at the same time.
Yeah, that's good advice. Yeah, I had, when I was sick, I had a nasty Blastocystis hominis infection myself, and it was persistent. It wasn't until I got rid of a certain amount of mercury upstream that I was able to get my microbiome really healthy enough to beat it back and keep it back, right? So, but I did a lot of the products. Systemic Formulas has their VRM products. Mm-hmm. They have the 1 and the 2, which are for larger ones, and the 3 and the 4 for these persistent little guys that they're tough. Put it with the Biocidin. I think we have something.
I agree. I think that would be a good one. Did you get that in India or in Mexico or in another country or here?
No clue. Just probably what came first, the chicken or the egg. I'm sure my high mercury levels created the opportunistic, environment for the opportunistic organism to take off in. And honestly, I have no idea. I think
there's some kind of relationship between mercury and Candida, right? Have you read about that?
Yeah, I had terrible Candida too. I mean, terrible. I couldn't get rid of it until I got my mercury down to a certain place. The Blastocystis hominis and the Candida. And I had a little bit of Giardia. There was a couple other, opportunes, right?
Right.
You have to look upstream. All right, last topic that I want to hit. We have a lot of people who, again, we're talking about can't fix the gut, can't get well. We talk a lot about this, right? 85% of all disease potentially starts in the mouth, whether it's amalgams, root canals, cavitations. We did a show with Dr. Jerry from New York. He's on Dr. Oz a lot, but we did the mouth-body connection. We talked about how to get rid of these cavitations correctly. A lot of these pathogens end up here. Matter of fact, systemically, causing heart attacks, strokes, high blood pressure. Matter of fact, my cavitation moved into my upper neck and caused arthritis. So talk about how we can use these for even improving this, because this is a problem.
Yes. So for years, we'd been saying to people, you could use the Biocidin on your toothbrush and press it into the gum line and so forth. And then Dr. Lynn Patrick, she's a naturopath and she lectures for ACAM and other groups. She had a really a terrible case of inflamed gums. And when her dentist took a scraping in her mouth was full of spirochetes and other bacteria. And anyway, so she used the liposomal Biocidin for 6 weeks as a rinse twice a day after she brushed. And when she went back to the dentist and he scraped again, they were all gone. And he was so blown away. He's like, I need to study this. I want to know about this. So we sent him a few cases of the liposomal Biocidin and had him try it on a number of patients with similar kinds of problems. And every single one of those patients came back with clean slides after 6 to 8 weeks. And so based on that, he got excited about doing a study on cavitations. So what he did was he had a patient with a root canal. He takes out the root canal, and then he debrides and cleans the area. He ozonates the area, and then he gets a sample of the bone and sends that to a lab called DNA Connections and gets a DNA analysis. Yeah. So the result of this bone on, I think he did 13 patients, the average number of pathogens these patients had in their bone was 35. These things included HPV, amoebas, every kind of bad bacteria. So after they went home, he treated them on the spot with the liposomal Biocidin and rinsed the area with it, and then closed it up, and then sent them home with the liposomal Biocidin. And they use that for 8 weeks, and then come back in, open the area back up, go back into the bone, and take another sample. And guess what? Those patients went from like 35 pathogens down to 3 or 4. Yeah. And so based on that, we decided to take the liposomal Biocidin formula, add to it some things for the gums like clove and CoQ10 and quercetin and myrrh, and a little bit of mint for flavor. And we created like a specific oral solution called the Dentalcidin oral solution. And we also took the Biocidin and put it in a toothpaste. So now you can brush with the Biocidin toothpaste as a daily maintenance. And if you need to treat more deeply, you can use this Dentalcidin rinse. And so it's just been amazing. We go to these dental conferences now. I'd never been to a holistic dental conference. We decided to show up with these things at a dental conference. The dentists were blown away when they saw the research we had done. They were like, "Where have you been? Well, why haven't we ever heard of this?" And we sold out. We couldn't even keep it in stock. So I never expected that level of response. But I think it's because, like you said, almost everybody is concerned about their oral health. And especially like even in the New York Times recently, they had articles about how the bacteria from your teeth can be causing cardiac events.
There was just a new study this year. I mean, absolutely positively linking these things to, Alzheimer's, stroke. You wouldn't believe the conditions. This is a big deal. Trust me, it is. And I'll tell you, I've never used the Biocidin for this yet, so you better send me some of this.
I will. I'm going to send you everything.
It's going out there. Yeah.
You're going to try it. Everyone loves the Dentalcidin toothpaste because it's got a special professional grade dental hydrated silica that really cleans. Like what I noticed with this toothpaste is I was using like the natural like EcoDent tooth powder with the baking soda and sea salt for years. That was what I used, and it was fine. But by the end of the day, I could feel that film on my mouth and like, oh, I need to brush my teeth again. But when you use the Dentalcidin, the anti-plaque ability is so strong of the Biocidin. By the end of the day, your teeth still feel clean. You'll notice this. I'll look forward to your feedback. Everyone who has tried that toothpaste just doesn't want to be without it. Everyone loves it.
No, yeah, can't wait. Well, I'll tell you, those cavitations, you're right about one thing. You find spirochetes in them. We've tested enough of them. You find parasites in some of these cavitations.
Exactly.
So, folks, if you haven't watched The Mouth-Body Connection, it was a few months ago. It's episode 210. I just told someone to watch it today. By the way, that's why I know the episode number. But watch it. This is a big deal, right? So that's awesome. We got to get our dentist using your product. I'm going to tell Dr. Jerry and Dr. Grieco. We have a bunch of dentists. And I just interviewed another dentist last show. Just amazing dentist from California. I'm sure he'll be wanting to know about it too. So fantastic.
Good.
Well, thanks for coming on. People are going to absolutely love trying the products, and we can't wait. So that's why we had you here. And folks watching, go to Revelation Health. You'll be able to see, they'll put them up there somewhere so you know where they are. You can just put them in the search engine, the Biocidin, the Oliverex, and the Proflora, but all the ones we mentioned, they'll be there. The oral stuff as well. So thank you for being on the show. Wealth of knowledge in this area. Thanks for developing these formulas as well.
Oh, thank you. It's a pleasure.
Awesome.
All right. Look forward to hearing from you.
You will.
Okay. Bye-bye.